All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of just VR Download, a twice weekly show where we do news and reviews and stuff. Yes, VR Download. We have eliminated unnecessary articles. Gone just for expedience. I'm your host, Kyle, and today here with me is...
Hi, Ian Hamilton. Going to demonstrate my fingers. Welcome. Yeah.
So we've had some fun setting up today because I got a new pad here, a new tablet. I accidentally ordered the Australian version, and so all of my notes are upside down. So I will be reading all of my news notes as good as I can while it's upside down. So feel free, Ian, to laugh.
It's hysterical to me. It's not the worst bug we've had in the studio, though.
No, not at all. But it is definitely going to be a fun challenge. I think this is just Heaney, who's built the Upload Virtual Studios. I think he's just messing with me. I think he's pranking me with this. So let's see how this goes. And Ian, feel free to interrupt me when I do something horribly wrong. Now, I won't be able to see the chat, so Ian will have to man the chat. So if you're watching live on YouTube right now, welcome. Hi. And
Portal, yes,
thanks
we're
for
live.
joining us.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, Smashed Reality. Yes, we're live.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, Ian, I guess let's go ahead and try to get into this very, very backwards news.
Yes.
Not really backwards, it's upside down. So we'll see how this goes. All right. News piece number one. HTC's VR Facial Tracker works on Quest and Index with a little DIY magic. People are already getting HTC's new VR Facial Tracker to work on Quest and Index with a little DIY. You know, Ian, the idea of DIY, I mean, VR has been kind of thriving on that since its very, very early days. I mean, even the first Rift itself was very DIY. What do we think of this process that people have come up with?
Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed Shen over there at HTC gave this warning note that they can only really make sure the experience is good on the Vive Pro because they calibrated their machine learning training for that headset's position. So there's a very good likelihood that if you hook this up to another headset, your performance is not going to be the same as the main Vive Pro headset that it's calibrated for. So we'll kind of see. We haven't gotten our hands on one of these ourselves just yet. We've reached out to HTC to try to get our hands on one, but we haven't just yet. But as soon as we do, we'll definitely put this through its paces on the different headsets.
So what exactly is happening with this hardware? Because it feels like it's not just hardware that's needed, but it's also the software to read the messages coming from this device. I mean, it's a glorified camera, sensor, whatever, that's translating all of the movements into something that is reasonably understandable from the headset. Where does the mojo happen? Do we really know?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I remember I kind of like turn my brain off on some of these DIY situations because it's such a small percentage of people out there that are actually going to go through the steps to activate this stuff. I remember Jamie did that article about using the Index controllers with the Reverb Generation 2. So you get the best possible visuals with inside-out tracking, and then you also get the Index controllers. And it's like, what is maybe a couple dozen people, couple hundred people worldwide are actually going to go through the steps to actually do that, even though it is technically the best VR experience you can get in VR in this year. So I imagine, you're going to have to probably involve a PC in this process if you're trying to do it on a Quest. But I mean, who wants to do that if you're really going to have to go through those steps?
You know, I'm a big fan of the DIY stuff. I mean, for almost my whole life, I have wanted to try to get hardware to do things it's not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I am a huge fan of the DIY stuff. I still come back to that, that concept of, how it's actually working, what software is necessary. Do the actual apps need to have a specific developer kit or something installed, or is it part of the Steam VR plugin? These are all things I'm very curious about. And actually, when you say about the DIY stuff, think about how many people have actually done FrankenQuest. I
It's
mean, I've
true.
got,
That's right.
that was a pretty big deal because it was something that was, in many people's opinions, horribly lacking in some of the other headsets, and so they have found a way to blend concepts. So I think
So
there's some validity to this.
I got sent a Steam link or a Steam code recently, and that was recommended by the developer. Use this on Index, and my Index was sitting in a box. I have not broken my Index out of its box in like 6 or 9 months, and I went through this whole process just at war with myself of like, do I have to set up 2 base stations? Are both the controllers plugged in? Am I really going to pull my PC out and plug a USB cord and a DisplayPort cord into the back of my PC, and then also run that to power? Like, I just was like, I love this thing. It's the most comfortable headset, but I still didn't want to go through all those extra steps to plug all that extra in. And with this DIY stuff, it's always a lot of messing around and hours spent kind of like trial and erroring. That's one thing. What you said about the FrankenQuest is spot on. Like, the comfort, you need to get the comfort. Anyone will do. You'll jump through a lot of hoops for a more comfortable experience on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
I'm
I know
looking
what you
at these
mean.
comments here.
Yeah.
There's a really funny comment here. That someone says, couldn't he just rotate it upside down? And Heaney replied, it wouldn't be a good troll if I let him fix it that easy.
Thanks, Eni. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yes. Yeah. No, I've already tried to rotate. It seems to be fixed in space, so I guess I'm stuck with it. Yeah. I really feel you though, Ian, on the on having the lighthouse boxes and everything. Now I am in my VR dungeon, as I call it, and I've got the devices up in the corners over here and over here, and they haven't been plugged in probably in, I don't know, a couple months, because I've had to steal the plugs for other things to plug in. I haven't used any lighthouse headsets in probably, I would say, 3 months. I mean, how often do you really use your lighthouse boxes nowadays?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I've kind of recorded this on my Twitter feed where I keep talking about it. When in 2019, when Index came out, there was a battle between going back and forth between my Quest and my Index. Like, I would go for long periods where I don't even want to pick up the Quest because it feels like such a big brick on my face. And then I'd go periods where like 3 new games came out for Quest, and I really wouldn't want to go back to using the Index for a long time. And then by 2020, I started using Quest a lot more. And now 2021, it's Quest 2 almost all the time. And I've got a Reverb G2 that I can use, and I've got Index I can use. And it's just not convenient for the type of work that we do. That's not representative of, like, if you're a flight simulator person, if you want to go into flight simulator and you've got the graphics card for it, you're going to go for the best fidelity experience you've got. And it's not a big issue to like just set this up once and go for it. But like we get codes coming in from all different stores and every different experience. It's just, oh, here's this Quest that I can use standalone, or I can plug in with a simple USB cable and still get a pretty decent experience out of something. So it's definitely not representative of what the users out there are going to experience. But for me, yeah, I'm almost all Quest all the time these days.
Yeah, even like last night, I spent quite a number of hours in my Quest, just going through some things, and I was using virtual desktop, and I was very tempted to hit the Steam VR, pop that open, see what kind of great little streaming mechanisms that I can get out of that. But like you said, when I want that type of fidelity, I'm going to I'm going to plug it in with a link on a beefy computer where I can get the good graphics and everything. Stream. I'm not going to try to stream Alex over Wi-Fi from a computer to my Quest and then try to have a good experience. I'm just not going to. I'm not saying I wouldn't do that. I'm just saying I would prefer not to.
That Steam VR setup experience is starting to look more and more ancient as time goes on too. Like I set up the boxes for the Index, sat down in my chair, and my location was about like 9 feet below the floor of the Steam VR room. And I'm like, oh, I got to go back and do the whole room setup again and calibrate where the floor is and tell it where my seating is. And I have to do all of that outside the headset, and that's night and day compared to putting on a Quest. And yeah, it's annoying when I have to go and set up my Quest almost in each. Like I've had this glitch, and I know our team has had this glitch where it almost like every time you put on the Quest headset, you've got to set up the room again. And like, yeah, that's annoying, but that's still less annoying than having to put the headset off and do this whole process where you're going back and forth to the headset, to the PC, and doing things on the PC to select the next step of the setup process. They really need to make that setup process easier in Steam VR. I want to say hi to Nathan, Agent 83, Greg's. We got people watching us all over the world. Thank you all for tuning in. Smashed, of course. Thank you all for tuning in.
Great. Awesome. Well, hey, let's move on to the next piece of news. If you're just joining us, my notes are upside down. And so bear with me as I try to exercise a part of my brain that, just reading things upside down is not a skill that you quite frequently practice, even though most of us can do it. So let's see what the next piece of news is. Looks like PS5 VR controllers. That's right. Revealed by Sony, finger detection and more. Sony has officially revealed new PS5 VR controllers with plenty of new features, including finger detection and inside-out tracking. Boy, I'll tell you what, Ian, the thing that I found to be the most intriguing part of this news is the inside-out tracking. Now, I saw somebody posted, the Move camera strapped to the top of the PSVR, and I was like, that's clever. Whoever did that, that's really funny. But what does this mean exactly? I mean, inside-out tracking from the headset. How does that change our perspective of what we think the PSVR 2 is going to look like?
Well, Jamie has written an editorial out there, and he's kind of walked. I think it's an editorial. He may have just written it as a normal sort of analysis piece. But the idea is that we could have two models of next generation PlayStation VR coming. There could be a wired one that is perhaps low cost, and then a wireless one that has more packed in hardware wise to make it have a wireless link to your PlayStation system. So it's possible that we could still have a wireless PlayStation next generation VR headset, and they just haven't announced the wireless version yet. They've only been very clear that it's a single wire for the wired version. Both of those systems could be tracked via inside-out tracking. So it could have multiple cameras on either headset and track inside out that way. These controllers look great. The fact that it includes the haptics, it's probably going to have the resistive buttons. So when you pull the trigger, sometimes the trigger pushes back at you. And so if you're pulling back a bow, maybe you get a little bit more tension as you're pulling back that bow. And you actually feel that much more like you're pulling back a real life bow. And obviously, bows can already do incredible things. Like if you go back to the lab from 2016 and the incredible haptics they could do with the Vive wands with pulling back a bow were just a phenomenal sense of giving you that feeling of pulling back a bow. But it could be just that much more. Imagine like actually feeling the controller getting a little resistant on you as you're pulling this back. It could be phenomenal. The thing that kind of got me really excited was I just turned on my PlayStation 5 and I saw this image on my TV in the PlayStation 5 home screen because Sony is promoting it. And I think that's kind of like the ultimate takeaway here is that if you wanted to get into next generation VR, here's Sony telling you you don't have to get into Facebook right now. You can wait and we'll be ready for you.
Hmm. What do you think of this design? I mean, obviously, there's going to be some form of IR trackers here that are facing the camera, which I think is actually very clever. And the idea that it goes up your arm a bit to where your wrist is, it almost feels like, from a rotation perspective, that might actually add some level of, I don't know, like a joint almost.
I was
I don't
thinking they
know.
almost look like boxing gloves to me, and I feel like my hands are going to be pretty protected punching around in these things. Like, I feel like the tracking rings on a lot of these still expose your hand in various configurations, and I guess
Mhm.
these fingers are still a little exposed. But I don't know if they're gonna, if you hit a wall or something, if they're still gonna get past this tracking ring here. I don't
I
know.
wonder.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find fun, when I think back to when we first got our Wii, our Nintendo Wii, was that there were so many different attachments that you could get for the different controllers and stuff. And I'm wondering if this is intentional to, like, you could put a boxing glove over it, or you could
Mm.
put a jousting. I don't know. That's
Well,
ridiculous.
there's
Yeah, let's.
probably lights inside here, so I doubt there's going to be something. But Heaney did point out something. Heaney, do you have the other image of the USB-C plugs on the bottom of these
Oh
things?
yeah, I see
Heaney
that.
pointed this out that it looks. He thinks it's like almost a no-brainer that there's probably going to be a dock
Hmm.
that you put these things into. You just slide them
Hmm.
right into a dock, and they'll both be charging because of the position of the USB-C plugs on these things. I got the so what's the company's name? Anchor. Anchor sent me one of their charging docks. So I've
Oh.
been evaluating that and getting and trying out that dock. And what it for the Oculus Quest 2, what it includes is this little magnetic piece that you plug into the USB-C port of the Oculus Quest 2, and then you pull off the battery covers on each of the controllers and insert this special battery that Anchor has, and it charges up that battery. And so all three of these pieces just sit right onto the dock and automatically charge. And I've got a fully charged, ready to go controllers, ready to go headset at any given moment. And if Sony doesn't match that by the time this comes out with some kind of a charging dock, I would be pretty disappointed.
Man, that's how often do you really use your. Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that. How often do you really use your controllers nowadays with the hand tracking on the Quest?
Yeah, I think I'm as each of these new apps for hand tracking comes out, there's more and more every day. Obviously, I think we're a little ahead of the curve here with our studio, where I love using this studio without controllers.
Mhm.
And we have guests come into our studio for interviews these days. And I've noticed a fair number of our guests come in with the controllers in their hands just
Not
because
knowing what
they
to
kind of
expect. Yeah.
expect, yeah, they
Mhm.
kind of expect that you're going to have to use the controllers. But again and again and again, because I'm using the studio, I leave the controllers uh, down. I don't like using the controllers very often. Um, and I've got more apps in my previews listed that are just they're phenomenal. We got that article up about the Cubism update that's got hand tracking, and I'm trying a couple things out. One thing that I can't talk about just yet, that just the hand tracking is getting really really good, and I'm noticing other devs. Oculus has reserved this pinch gesture when you're pointed at your face for the Oculus menu, and then this gesture on this finger for another sort of menu button. Um,
Mhm.
but there's other gestures you can do with your fingers. And as soon as developers start accessing those other gestures, there's obviously the app, the First Steps one, where you can kind of like do this for a gun in the midair, and it's terrible. It's a terrible gesture. Like it's not recognized very well.
Yeah.
Like there's still other things that devs can do with just hand tracking. It's getting really good.
I wonder how good IR is that or just the finger tracking in general. I'm thinking about it from both the controller perspective and from hand tracking perspective. If you had a clear gun, would that help? Would you be able to do that?
Mm.
You know, would it still be able to track the fingers if it was clear?
Interesting idea. That's
I
a
don't know.
little
I don't
plastic
know.
clear gun.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, the idea of finger tracking, it has definitely changed our lives. But yeah, I don't use my controllers aren't even in my room. In the room that I'm sitting in right now, they're upstairs somewhere. I haven't used the controllers. Now I did find that last night when I was in virtual desktop, wanting a controller. I actually turned the hand tracking off. I was watching Hulu on my desktop computer because it was logged in and I knew right where I could pick up, and I opened it up, and next thing I know, every time I just moved a little bit, virtual desktop was like, "Ooh, are you trying to interact with the screen?" I'm like, no. I had to turn that off. So, it's a thing. Yeah.
I want to talk about how like each generation of VR headset that we get, we kind of believe is going to be the mainstream VR headset. I remember if we go back and read our article on the 2018 Oculus Go, that thing looked like it was meant for mainstream VR. And in retrospect, $200 with 3 DOF was not it. We had to get 6 DOF in there because it's that much more comfortable. And even now in 2021 with the Quest 2, I have put Quest 2 on a bunch of people, and I've even started putting them in hand tracking experiences now. Like my go-to was BOGO. I loved using BOGO for first timers, where you could say, okay, hey, you can actually lean forward and pet BOGO with your hands, and teaching them that they can walk over and do that. BOGO obviously doesn't support hand tracking yet. And so I've installed that App Lab version of First Steps so that people can just use their hands for hand tracking and try out all the various things. But if you watch first timers doing that App Lab First Steps, it's still pretty crummy. Like they're still like doing things that aren't responsive. And you don't want your first time experience for a new VR user to be that. Now, when I can put a headset on a person for the first time, and their mind is simply blown just by hand tracking, and everything they do around them actually works, that's going to be the mainstream VR headset. And I think we're this close. We need to improve the cameras. I'm seeing people in the commenters saying that they want to see color pass through out of the Sony headset, and I completely agree. We really need to get to color pass through.
Color pass through is a big deal. Whoever hits that out of the park first try is going to definitely gain some traction there. All right, are we ready to move on to the next piece of news, Ian? Or do we have any comments?
Saying hi to Paradise Decay, Andrew. Lots of people talking amongst themselves. Yeah, do you think Apple will have that mainstream experience? I think they will. I think that's what Apple's trying for.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't beat them to the punch, Apple will be the first one with the pass-through, color pass-through with the, yeah.
That's what Heaney and I are debating, whether Facebook's going to try another headset by the end of the year. I think Heaney's in the camp where we're probably a little ways away from a new headset, but maybe it's a different product line that Facebook launches that isn't called a Quest, and it's something like the Go, a little bit like the Quest, something in between, and a whole new name.
I
think Facebook wants to be aggressive.
I'm afraid. I am very, very afraid, because just on that point real quick, if Facebook even announces a new headset before November, before Thanksgiving, you're going to completely ruin Christmas holiday, winter holiday purchases for the Quest 2 and whatever remnants are left over of the Quest 1 refurbs and stuff. If they announce something that's going to come out in February or March, that they're not actually, but they got to get it announced before the end of the year, I have a feeling that could kill some sales.
No, if they can't ship it before the end of the year, I think they'll keep it until next year. And obviously that's the other element of this. There's a weird chip shortage right now that's making it really difficult for people to ship new products.
Yeah. So who knows? But I don't think it would behoove them to get a new product out until first quarter next year. I
And
really
Super
just don't think there will be.
Index does have color pass through, but the software isn't quite up to par just yet with that pass through experience. It's okay, but like it's kind of it's a bad experience. Like the menu and stuff is not it's not great with that yet.
Confession time. I've never tried the Index. I have never been at a show where it was available for me to see it. I did not get one sent to me, nor did I justify the cost of getting it. So I did not even know that it had color pass through. That's how ignorant I am on that.
It got added. It got added pretty far after I think launch, and it needs a great software experience with it, and that software experience isn't quite where on Quest we can now bring our couches into VR, and there's nothing like that yet, really. I think you can have your room as your barrier in an Index, but it's still the software is a little weird. I was messing with menus and I could somehow see my outline. It's nice. I'm not gonna lie, I like it. It's one of those things that the Quest software is just far beyond where everyone else is right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it still has its challenges as well. So plenty of room for growth for every company, indeed. All right, well, let's move on to the next piece of news. Facebook research on wrist-based hand tracking and haptics. Facebook shared some of its research on wrist-mounted devices for high-fidelity neural finger tracking and haptic feedback. Wow, that was a hard sentence to read upside down. So I've seen things like this before. Like just to give everybody a little primer on how this works, it reads the sensory coming from your wrist, the electrical impulses, and it can even detect you want to move your finger before you even move your finger, which is really cool. But this is not the first time I've seen this kind of technology. I remember, 5 or 6 years ago, there was like wasn't it called like the Mio or something like that? It was an armband.
Yep. It's not a new idea, and I think the thing that gets me that's really interesting to me about this. So I've got some quotes written down here in my notes from Heaney's article about this, where he sat with Facebook in a round table and got some of this info. So I'll read out some of this info that we've got in the article. But I find it interesting that we did a briefing with Facebook about 6 months ago with Michael Abrash in the room, and they were talking about the audio experience and how Facebook was going to get very serious about audio in AR and VR, and they were describing perceptual superpowers, the ability to hear a person across the room, or rather, if you're in a very, very loud room, to tune everyone else out except the people who are talking directly to you. You combine that with this, which is the 2 briefings Facebook has more or less given press in a very broad way. And what you've got are Facebook saying, we're interested in earbuds and we're interested in watches. And you've got a very clear sign here that Facebook is saying, we're actually interested in all the same devices that Apple is interested in. We think that there's products down the line that we need to be building that Apple is already building. And I think that's implied by a lot of this research that Facebook is doing. And Facebook has to overcome this creep factor that everyone is weirded out that Facebook is making these devices, that Apple doesn't have that same battle. Like, a lot of people trust Apple when they don't trust Facebook. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of this research is being talked about ahead of actually doing the product launches that are probably a year or 2 down the line for these types of products. So glasses, watches, earbuds, Apple's working on them, Facebook's working on them, and they're going to be competing product lines if they aren't already.
I feel like the idea of a watch as a controller is not new. I think we've discussed the possibility of, Apple could take the iWatch and turn it into some form of controller or whatever, have little sensors that shoot out the back of it and remembers where your hand. I don't know. But if they're going to try to convert this thing that they've built, this right here, it looks like an iPod Nano on top of something that my sister would have worn in the 80s. I don't know. Okay, so you wear a watch, but you have two hands. So are we going to someday see people walking around with two devices on one on each wrist? So the next time you see somebody with two watches on, they're not crazy. They're just ahead of you technologically speaking. I don't know.
That's a good point. I wonder how often, depending on the sensors on the devices themselves, whether you could get away with your offhand being inferred most of the time, but your main hand being really dexterous. So if I'm left-handed, I would wear it on my left hand and have really, really good tracking on this hand. But I could just deal with maybe optical tracking or so-so tracking over on this hand because it's so focused on getting everything right with the main hand I use. But then again, typing on a virtual keyboard, that's
right.
if I want to use this as a replacement for a $100 accessory and actually type on any surface around me, I will probably need it on both hands. I want to respond to Big Show's comment. I think Heaney responded to it in our comments, but Big Show, thank you for the donation, and asked if Quest Pro or Quest 3 comes out this year, what chip do you think it will use? I say the Snapdragon that matches an Apple M1X chip. Heaney is saying, I think it's incredibly unlikely that we'll see a Quest 3 this year, but if it did, it would use the Snapdragon 888 to be an improvement. Now, that's Qualcomm, of course, said if we see an XR2, a new XR2, they'll call it an XR2 Revision 2, not like an XR3. And I think it's going to be really hard for anyone else to match the performance that Apple is getting out of its chips because they've been working so hard for so long to make chips that perform really at specific tasks really, 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 really well and don't drain a lot of power. And that's going to be Apple's. We've talked about this before. It's going to be one of Apple's advantages for a long time. Let me go to some of these notes I've got of these quotes from this article that Heaney wrote. This is Facebook talking. Quote, we have tried, I'll do my quote fingers here. We have tried tons of virtual interactions in both VR and AR with both the vibration and squeeze haptic capabilities of TASB. So there's TASB stands for Tactical and Squeeze Bracelet Interface. This includes simple things like push, turn, and pull buttons, feeling textures, and moving virtual objects in space. We've also tried more exotic examples, things like climbing a ladder or using a bow and arrow. We tested to see if the vibration and squeeze feedback of TASB on your wrist could make it feel like you're naturally interacting with these objects. Amazingly, due to sensory substitution, where your body combines the various multisensory information, the answer can be yes.
Oh my.
So Facebook is claiming that from this wrist, and because of the sensations that they supply you at your wrist, your brain will accept it that you're actually doing things with your fingertips. That's big.
Amazing. That's amazing. And also, TASB sounds like a great name for a character coming soon to a new 2.5D side scroller game. Somebody make that for me. TASB's Adventures. This thing right here, this is really a little creepy. Just to watch this without it actually being in like this right here. Oh boy. Wowzers. That's intriguing.
Yeah, so I don't think Heaney's tried this out yet, and someone else is pointing out the Mio was the company that Facebook bought. I think that's true.
Oh, okay. Well,
Control
that answers a lot
Labs.
of questions then.
Uh, yeah, I get confused because there was a couple companies there, and they got acquired by different organizations. There was one company that got bought by Google, um, but yeah, Apple bought or Facebook bought Control Labs, and they had an early wristband. And no, yeah, Heaney's saying that Mayo sold their intellectual property to Control Labs, and then Control Labs got bought by Facebook. So
Ah,
that's the lineage there. And see if there's any other commenters. Onakazi saying I'd rather have everything be symmetrical, having it on both hands. And no, we have not gotten to try these latest ones. I think we've missed the demos on some of these things when they were before they got bought by the big behemoths. Um, hopefully, we get to try them sometime soon.
yeah, yeah. That's one of the struggles with not having the ability to go and get in a giant room full of 20,000 people and say, hey, let's all try this in sequential order and try to keep it clean in between. It kind of freaks me out a little bit right now, got to admit. So, all right. Well, anything more on controllers?
I think we got the core. Let us know if you've got any questions that we didn't get to here. The one, Heaney, if you could show the video, I suppose, of there it is. So this person has obviously a very different appendage than most people, and apparently Facebook was saying that uh, this person felt like you could see a full hand here inside the computer. They were actually grasping with all 5 digits for the first time. And that was Facebook's researcher relaying what this person had apparently experienced by using this hardware. And I come back to this again and again. Last year, I brought a deaf person into a VR experience with just Facebook's hand tracking, and had a couple other people who could actually sign pretty well. And the hand tracking on current systems, this is a tacked on experience, right? The original headset for Quest didn't have hand tracking built in. It was added on later, and you're using 4 grayscale cameras. And here was our video where a lot of hand signs are gesturing from the body outward. And without the cameras pointed directly at the chest, this sort of communication system isn't great for people who sign as their native main language. And so Facebook needs to build headsets, or Apple needs to build headsets, or Google, or one of these companies needs to build headsets that are specifically tuned to serve, to capture all of those movements in order
Mm-hmm.
for these headsets to be accessible, and for this mode of communication to be completely accessible to people. And I reached out to Facebook to ask them, like, what are you going to be designing your first? I'm implying with my questions, seeing how much I can get out of them, they'll actually say. But I want to find out, are they going to build their future products around this interaction system? Are they going to try to make the headsets good enough that you could have a person who natively signs down in Florida or in China or in England, and have them be able to communicate with another signer in a whole nother part of the world? And could you have a room with 10 different people in it, all of whom can't hear, but all of them able to sign as naturally as if they were in the real world? That, I think, should be the bar for future generations of this technology. And that demo that we saw from Facebook of the wristband could be another piece of the puzzle of making
Mm-hmm.
this sort of thing really work.
So, just a little side note there. My 2 older daughters both know ASL, American Sign Language, and I remember when you were first having this, you wanted to see what my children thought about it. And, I'll be honest, we did finally get some some reasons why it's not quite up to par. Number one, if you try doing, sign language, it's there's a lot of finger overlapping in certain letters and things that you can't really do right now because there's occlusion and stuff like that. But also, and this gets back to one of our previous article or our previous news pieces, is that the facial tracking. Because
Yeah.
when you do sign language, it's very emotive. You use your mouth and your face and everything, and it's difficult to get all of that when your head is just a
Yeah.
lollipop in two white hands. You need more. So
Yeah.
I think that was smart to have that level of question asked, is like, use this as a way to understand whether or not you got finger tracking right, is if ASL is seamless.
So yeah, Heaney, I don't know if you've got that tweet from the Control Labs researcher, but I retweeted it in my timeline, where a Control Labs researcher was saying, this is Control Labs is the company that Facebook acquired that is part of this technology that we're talking about here. And the tweet more or less suggested that all the hand tracking that we were seeing in these videos was not visual optical hand tracking. It was all coming from the wristband. So if you can accept that this wristband is getting really, 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 really good hand tracking, and then you theorize down the line that they put on the facial trackers to get the face motions like you're saying, and then they combine the wristbands with what the headsets cameras are seeing, then you've got a piece of hardware for each wrist in order to have theoretically perfect hand tracking combined with the headset itself. So maybe you could get okay hand tracking just out of the headset's cameras, and then put these things on, and boom, everything is there. You've got the facial motions via the facial tracker, and you've got this fusion happening between what these provide and what the headset provides. And bam, maybe we could have ASL via VR.
Yep. Son, I got one word for you. Sensor fusion. Oh, that's two words. I got one term for you. Sensor fusion. Sensor fusion is the future, folks. Definitely.
Let me talk about these comments. Yeah. Big Show. Big Show, thank you for the donation again. Big Show saying, man, Facebook is doing so much for VR and AR. This is Ready Player One type stuff. I hope Sony and Apple are doing the same. Love the show. And I think the rest of your comment got cut off here, Big Show. But we are one of the other comments here is we are working towards having people come into the studio. It's one of the things down the line where hopefully we can have a live audience inside VR. And yes, you've got occlusion with the hands. You can't cross over your fingers. Smashed Reality talking about that, and that's one of the things that's not quite there yet with the things you were just talking about, that Heaney, or Kyle, sorry. Let's see. Yeah, those are all the comments I'm seeing that we should respond to right now.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's do the last piece of news. Hopefully my final time to read something upside down. Yes, my notes are upside down this episode. So here we go. Valve headset strap patent filing depicts wireless version. Valve Corporation filed a patent application for a VR headset adjustable head strap, and one of its embodiments depicts a wireless unit. Okay, well, man, wireless. That's like the hot feature that every headset nowadays has to have. I mean, if you're pumping out wired headsets right now, go back to 2019, because we just don't want that anymore.
Yep, I think the proof is sort of in the numbers of just how many people really want wireless. I remember talking to one of the wireless tech people, a CEO of one of the wireless tech companies in 2018-ish. As soon as wireless was out there, it was going to be 100% adoption of wireless headsets. And that comment was right and it was wrong, because you don't want to be modding your PC again. Like, people have already done enough to mod their PC. They've put in the graphics card, they built the PC, They want to be done with it. Yes, there's a certain selection of people who will put in new pieces into their PC, but just it's not a big percentage. It's not growing the market into the millions beyond the gamer PCs out there. And so, yes, we need wireless, but we need wireless that's really, really easy to use. And attaching a piece to your motherboard is not the way. So Heaney and I had quite a lot of debate back and forth about this patent. Heaney has read his eyes are blurry looking at patents over the years. You can't look at this and make any inferences about what Valve's product plans are going to be. This this is only so what a patent does is they've got some general idea that they're trying to protect and get money for and make sure no one can copy. And what they do in the patent is they outline a dozen or 2 dozen different variations on this initial idea in order to make sure that no one can copy any of the different variations on the idea. And so there was like standalone verbiage in this patent. And yeah, one of these drawings showed this giant, massive piece on the back of the headset that
Mhm.
could house a lot of the hardware, battery, processor, antenna. They're talking about all these things being on the back, and then wires bringing and communicating with the front of the headset. And maybe there being wires here or wires along the top.
This is where the drill bits go into your skull,
Well,
and
you're being funny there, but like
I am.
you got to remember that Valve is a member of the Open BCI Brain
Yes.
Computer Interface organization, and
Beautiful
it's
segue.
literally been described as their Open BCI devices as being a modified VR head strap. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like implied that perhaps the brain computer interfaces that we're looking at having in a couple years are going to either work in tandem or alongside the straps that are being developed for VR headsets. Um, and I love this thing where they're actually showing that there's this unit here that separates. Yeah, here's the Open BCI device that's very similar looking. But on that last image, you've got this cushion on the back of your skull that separates whatever processors and heat are produced in
Mhm.
this
That's
device
smart. Yeah.
from actually touching the back of your head.
Well, I mean, there's so many different things that comes from this piece attached here is, yeah, number one, I didn't actually think about the heat dispersion, getting it away from the back of your head. That's always good. You don't want to fry your medulla. But also, that has to do something for you from a weight perspective as well. I mean, it's just weight and balance. I mean, after you wear something for like 3 hours, your head starts to fall down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this design, I mean, I feel like there's some magic person out there who's going to come up with the perfect design for a headset one of these days. And this is new. This is fun. I don't know. I'd have to try that before I'd be okay with it. But yeah.
Well, it's interesting to think. So I just got finished saying we can't infer any product plans from these patent drawings. But I really seriously wonder if there's an indication that Valve thinks there's more to do at the top end of VR. That $1,000 for an index all in could just be the beginning. If they're
Mhm.
starting to put all these sensors along the length of your skull in order to read your mind more
Hmm.
intuitively than just inferring from your glasses what you're seeing with your eyes. Love City, Morse has come a long way. Did you leave? I think you might have left a comment on one of our articles saying that the same thing, or at least on one of our other YouTube videos, where I love that, where like here you are over in northwestern United States, and I'm in the central of the United States, and Heaney, who's running this broadcast, is over in Ireland. And if you think back as like Morse code being the earliest form of being able to communicate over distance, here is where we are today. And these headsets that we're talking about now are the next steps. I love that. I love that comment. Um, let's see what other comments we have here. No, I
I'm
don't think we're going
assuming
to talk
these
about
are
Pimax right
antennas.
now.
You think these are antennas, Ian? Right here and right here.
I think they're dials for the strap, but in the patent, they did talk about having potentially an antenna on the front and an antenna on the back, and then using a wire so that, if you're not facing the device with the front of your head, they could use the antenna on the back and get a good signal that way.
You know what the headsets need is the equivalent of power laces from Back to the Future 2. You just put the headset on and it just sucks straight to your face exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now that I think about it, no, that's a bad idea because that malfunction is not going to be pretty. Oh boy.
Yeah, and I'm talking. Onikazi's commenting about how that little extendable arm could be broken and how easily it could mess up. That's kind of like there were a lot of people complaining about all the pieces inside of the index controllers. The thumbstick issue that a lot of people were reporting, and we reached out to Valve to try to verify like how significant is this issue, because you've only got really one place to scream about when your products aren't working, and that's going straight to these subreddits for these owners and for these various communities. It's hard to gauge how widespread these issues are just from the volume of people coming to these sites. But that's one of the things to comment about the Sony controllers. Like, how many moving parts are going to be inside of these Sony controllers? And how expensive will they be when you compare to the hundreds of dollars that the index controllers cost in order for them to work?
All right, Ian.
It's just a lot of things to deal with.
So very, very early preliminary. Do you think they'll sell the controller separate from the headset, or do you think it'll all be bundled together like it obviously should?
That's a good question. I think it's got to be bundled. I don't think Sony's gonna try hand tracking only. For hand tracking only with
or game
controller, with the
mm-hmm.
It's not called DualShock, DualSense. If it's a DualSense controller with hand tracking, I don't know. Maybe there's compelling stuff they could do with that. I don't know. It's a good question. Let us know in the comments what you think of that idea. Do you think we're going to get a Sony headset with hand tracking and DualSense interaction, or do you think they're going to go straight to these? It's a good question.
And will they attach translucent boxing gloves? I'm obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with that. I'm never going to let that go until I see that for sure. I need to see translucent or transparent boxing glove attachments for the controllers. Okay, well, Ian, this was pretty good, even though my pad was upside down. That was an interesting challenge. I appreciate that, Heaney. You got me. That's a good burn. Yeah. So we're going to keep doing these shows twice weekly, once on Monday and once on Thursdays. Ian and I kind of do more of the hardware stuff, and the other guys do more gaming and software, things like that. Go ahead, Ian. What were you going to say?
I believe I'm going to have a special episode on Wednesday this week. Ooh. I have been talking to Daniel, who is at Pushmatrix on Twitter, to try to get him to come into the studio, and we're going to go through all of his nightmares live in our studio here. So if you're unfamiliar with Pushmatrix, he's been putting out more or less viral videos for like more than a year now, testing out hand tracking on Quest devices, and just putting out nightmare after nightmare where like each finger has little fingers coming out of it, and each time he moves a finger, all the little fingers on the tip of every finger do things. He's been grading his fingers. I've got a Google Drive folder that I've downloaded all of his nightmares and all of his prototypes, and we're going to go through them on Stevie here and talk about them.
Is he the one that did the peel his fingers back with this like string cheese?
He's actually got a worse one than the peeling of the finger, where I don't know if I'm allowed to describe it, but it's even grosser because he's added more effects to it. And I begged him to put the grosser one into the Google Drive folder so that I could show it to our viewers if our viewers were begging to be grossed out. And I don't know if they're going to be begging to be grossed out, so I won't show it if the viewers don't really want to see it. But yeah, he not only did the peeling one, he also had grating the fingers with a cheese grater.
Are we gonna have to put a disclaimer? We're gonna have to put a little TV 14 up here.
Maybe.
Parental discretion is advised. Yeah, I don't know. All right,
Grindcraft, gross us out.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get a real gross episode going. All right, folks. Well, as always, we want to encourage you to go check out uploadvr.com and our YouTube pages and our tweeters and our Facebookses and all of the fun stuff that we put out there for you daily. We're constantly putting new content out, and we appreciate. And if you'd like this kind of quality programming to continue, we need your support. So like and subscribe and do all the fun stuff. I sound like a PBS telethon here. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Ian?
Oh, just the commenters are cracking me up here. They're all saying that we can handle it, do it, gross us out. We all signed the waiver.
Oh, geez. Okay. Whoa. Wow. Our awesome audience. Yes. And feel free to leave comments after the fact. Obviously, we're done being live now, but leave comments. And if you're listening through the podcast, because you can listen to all of this on all the major podcast, sources, however it is, if you're Spotify or Pandora or iHeartRadio or I don't know, there's a million of them out there. And I'm subscribed to all of them. Ian, do you still listen to podcasts constantly?
No, I only watch the show. I watch it only. I got to have the video.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, to each their own. That's why we give it to you in so many different formats. That way you can enjoy it in your own special way.
We haven't trolled Siri yet. You want to try trolling Siri for our show?
Should I troll Siri?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'm going to have some repercussions if I do that. A lot of people have Apple phones. I mean, if I were to say something like, hey, Siri, open uploadvr.com, a lot of phones are going to go crazy. So I don't think I'm going to do that. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching this lovely episode. We'll see you in the future. Bye-bye.